The Nigerian political atmosphere is getting more interesting owing to the fact that political parties are gearing up for 2027 general election. And we have seen where politicians are defecting from one political party to the other, while some political parties are looking inward to galvanize support from main members of their political parties. Hello, dear. It's a pleasure once again to have you join us on Political Affairs on Karma TV. My name is Chris Jacobs, and today I will be speaking with Dr. Victor Dogo. He is the Principal Special Assistant to Governor Fintiri. Of course, he joins me now to further this conversation that is centered on Nigeria political development, looking at Adamawa State in focus. Dr. Victor, it's a pleasure to have you on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you look great, despite the numerous, and overbearing work that you have taken all this while upon yourself.
Yeah, I guess it's part of it, but notwithstanding, we keep life on and we keep moving.
That's great. Now, talk to me what you make of the current political situation in Nigeria. Looking at how political parties are gearing up, politicians as well are gearing up, and Nigerians are not letting anything behind. Everybody just seems to want to participate in the journey towards 2027. Talk to me about what you make of it.
Well, the fact remains that Nigeria has gone through stormy waters, and we're at the point whereby we really want to say we've lost someone really great. President, we've just lost our former president, Muhammadu Buhari. And it's something that calls for a kind of a reflection of what really has already occurred and the experiences we've had and what we want for tomorrow. Having said that, coming back to your question, whether we like it or not, I must admit that in as much as we have policy somersaults, we have issues of governance that are kind of struggling to come out of the roots. We have issues of people who seem to see themselves as greater than institutions that should make the system work. We have a lot of things going on. Now, the so-called funny approaches by different persons, either in a coalition, in any form of truce or whatever, calls for a sober reflection and a need to understand that whatever we are doing today, tomorrow will become the same reason why it's either people will praise you or throw stones. Nigeria has come to the point that we must put aside our differences and understand that we don't need so-called human beings that are bigger than institutions of Nigeria. We need people that instead understand the runnings of the institutions that make the Nigerian system, that can make the Nigerian system work.
I'm glad you brought this issue, because even before now, it's one of the fundamental flaws that Nigerians, have been faced with. Talking about where individuals seems to be bigger than institution, and there is this call in recent time by some eminent Nigerians that call themselves the Patriots. Trying to see whether or not the Nigerian constitution could be reviewed. And the likes of Anyoku, who was a former Secretary General of Commonwealth, is the one rather chairing the organization or chairing the committee. Do you see that as a welcome development, looking at how before now, over time, the Nigerians have suffered this relatively, where people assume the position of institutions and thereby making themselves more powerful than institution? Should we go for this constitutional review?
Well, I must admit that some of the names you've called presently are names I would be able to agree that they understand and respect what institutions are. But having said that, you must understand that the timing, of course, could it have come earlier, I would have been much more happier.
Well, if you said the timing could have come earlier, you can as well recall 2014 during former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, where he organized the 2014 confab that actually would have gone a long way, but the immediate past administration of the late Mahmoud Buhari seemed to have thrown it under the carpet. If that has been put in for, perhaps we wouldn't have been speaking whether or not Nigerians or politicians have assumed institutional office, thereby making themselves more powerful than institutions.
Well, you have a point, and that was the reason why I said that if it came earlier, it would be possible for us to push for an implementation. Now, when you have confabs, all sorts of gatherings and propositions coming up here and there, and they come earlier than the period in which you can enforce them and implement them, you discover there's going to be the push game of a government now saying either they want to wait for another government to come, or probably the time is late, they're going to electioneering period, and the rest. So had it been this started earlier, the moment they came on board, this administration, and that confab had come up and started, and they've already come out with their final communique, you discover that it is possible for Nigerians to now push it further for implementation. But in the situation whereby it's coming at this point in time, by next year they'll start talking about electioneering process and the rest, you discover that it will still be the same pattern. You see, Nigeria is very interesting.
But do you think there seemed to be a deliberate action from the power that be? If I say power that be, those are the echelon of affairs. Perhaps they might have scrutinized, the review, taking the key from the 2014 confab, and perhaps realized that if they should have allowed the confab to go through and find, its expression, it might hamper on a certain, interest, whether sentimentalism.
You see, there's no confab that comes up without an initial thoughts. And when I say initial thought, that means there must have been a thought about it by the people that are in power. What exactly do they want, and what is the feelings and what the feedback they are getting from the society, from the people, that would first of all instigate or push them towards accepting that there should be such a confab. And at the end of the day, you discover that in as much as they've understood the expectations of the people and they put forward such confab out there to give the people the feelings that they are trying to align with their expectations, most of the times if you look at the undertone, you discover it is either political. Get the people to believe that you are in line with what they are doing, and then draw them closer. But towards the end of it, you end up saying that there is no time, electioneering has come, and the rest. So at the same time, I must admit that it is important. But when you consider the basics for which it is being done and the time frame, you discover that we always end up in the same circle of the next government being the one to either come to implement. So it becomes funny. You must have a timetable. When you have a confab, you must have a period spelled out with the implementation period, in order that you'll be able to analyze the outcome of that confab and give a period of implementation within that tenure. Not that you are saying that you are trying to have a confab and you have not yet drawn out an implementation timetable. Because definitely before you step into it, you have an expectation.
But the implementation timetable, of course, should be on the purview.
That is why strategic planning is involved. A strategic plan, I would definitely sit down and consider when you're going to be bringing the options for implementation. And then you must have a time frame that if this is going to happen in November, by January next year, you are going to go into the process of implementation after studying that communication.
But isn't that a thing of concern that Nigerians have been speaking about reviewing the constitution since 2014? Now, some say that Nigeria's constitution is established on the wrong premise because it sounds militarily, because it was just coined by a few microscopic individuals that crafted the constitution, and it sounds more of a kind of a regimental, kind of rules, regulations that sounds like decrees. That was more of a military.
My brother, don't forget about what they are saying. Who are the people that sat down to do these things? They were not the military men in uniform. They were the same elites of the society, like those of them that are still gathering today. They were the ones that did provide the solutions, provide this line of actions, these thoughts that were supposed to govern and galvanize Nigeria to be a working system. So that is not an excuse. What we should be considering is the will, the political will. My problem is not in all this confab. It's the political will. We haven't yet gotten a leader who has the political will to want to align Nigeria in line with the expectations of the people. And That's the biggest problem. And that's why when we're talking about even politics today, I keep wondering, coalition here and there, alignment here and there. Ask yourself, amongst these people that are so-called patriots that are going into this coalition, how many of them have lived above board? That's the first thing.
But of course, if you can recall, what brought about Austin, former President Jonathan, was a product of coalition. You know, Buhari, late Muhammadu Buhari,
and a coalition that ended up when they came on board. They wanted to form a coalition to take government, and some of them, even before the election, left the same scene. And the same people are the ones forming coalition.
So it is not about coalition. It is about willpower.
Willpower.
All right. Let me allow you here to catch your breath, so that when we return from this short time, we'll build upon whether or not we still have politicians in Nigeria who are willed, you know, to exact power for the betterment of Nigerians. All right, you're watching Political Affairs on Kama TV, and of course, for those of you following us on our social handle platforms, you just stick around for a while. We'll take a break, and we'll be back in a short while. Join us again. Alright, glad to know you're still there. We have just joined us, you're watching Political Affairs on Kama TV. I've been speaking with Dr. Victor Dogo. He's a principal senior assistant to the governor of Adamawa State, and he has been furthering the conversation. Now, before the break, Doctor, you talked about, you said you don't have a problem with coalition, but rather you should have a problem with whether or not Nigerians have politicians who have the will to exact their powers to change the narrative. Yes, former President Olusegun Obasanjo also made such kind of an assertion. He said it's not about coalition, but of course, you know, sometimes the coalition is needed, because that's exactly what you know, the conglomeration of AC and other political parties, CPC and the likes, you know, that culminated to the formation of APC that ousted former President Goodluck Jonathan from power and installed late Muhammadu Buhari. That was a product of coalition. So will you say you underestimate the power of a coalition?
Sir, there's a great difference between the present coalition and what happened then.
And what difference does it make?
They were sitting, do you remember? Sitting governors, senators that were in office were part of that coalition. You remember? And they moved in with a mindset, not in a situation whereby you have,
but of course,
agreed.
Even during Goodluck Jonathan,
yes,
he had governors with him, and yet the coalition shifted him
That's
from his
what I'm
ground.
saying. They had, okay, who amongst the reputable governors presently that are in control of their states that are in the coalition? Who amongst them presently?
Each of the governors, and every governor has just one vote.
You see, no. There is a misplacement there.
No,
Let me explain what I mean.
You just have one thumb.
My brother, it is not like that. That's what we call collective representation. A councillor, as you call him, one term is representing a number of persons that come from his word. And you have chairmen, you have governors. These people represent the votes that voted them in, which means that any mistake you make with a governor, any mistake you make with a sitting senator, sitting governor, sitting rep or member of House of Assembly or chairman, that means you are playing with the number of votes that voted them in. Don't forget. You might argue and say he's the one that is going to put his thumb right there, but you've forgotten that he's representing the people that he has already dialogued with and that have said yes. And these people are the determining factor. So now, when you consider the coalition that is ongoing, you ask yourself, how many of governors presently on seat that have seen the vision in the so-called coalition, which would be able to give the reason why people should gravitate towards this particular coalition? But if you consider the fact that most of those are either former governors or former this or former that, you understand, you begin to wonder where exactly is that coalition headed. Very important, I must say.
It's all about 2027.
It's all about 2027, but ask yourself, what exactly is the characteristics behind the personalities that are involved in the coalition? Because when I made a kind of an x-ray of most of them, I discovered they are mostly aggrieved individuals, not aggrieved constituents. You understand? That are against. I studied the people behind them. I discovered that these people are people moving for a coalition, but you look at where they are coming from. Their constituents are remaining where they are. Their constituents are still backing the so-called political parties that they are against. I made mention of something when I was coming, when discussing with someone. I said, you see, any coalition without an alliance with the PDP and certain characteristics of persons that have the tendency of pulling certain movements from behind, I'm telling you that the coalition will not survive.
Let me also give you a little bit of kind of a submissions on a lighter note anyway. The minister of the FCT said he's in PDP, but he's going to work for APC come 2027. Likewise, the leader in the PDP, was it Damagund, he said, okay, they are in the PDP, but they're still going to work for the coalition. So isn't that interesting enough to understand understand that it is all about interest anyway?
Yes, that's what
yeah, but the PDP also, members of the Executive Council of the People's Democratic Party, I think a particular official of the party say, well, he will they are still in the PDP but will work for the coalition.
Okay, but what you're telling me right now is the confusion amongst everybody out there.
Everybody.
That tells you that the one that is not confused might carry the day if care is not taken. Because when you consider the fact that the so-called decamping that is taking place is either to the PDP or to the APC or the so-called coalition of aggrieved persons, which of course we Nigerians have come
even from the APC,
even from the
those
that
are
are aggrieved. So now these are conditions that we're presently envisaging. Now, having said that, I must say this. You see, it is not the issue of moving without first of all looking at where you came from. How has it been for the individuals that are coming into the coalition? Have they been people that have spearheaded successful coalitions and successfully been part of the movement? When you consider people like El Rufai, I'm sorry to say this, someone who was part of the former movement, someone who was for any reason whatsoever, whether a security report, whatever, they dropped him from being one of the ministers in this particular government, and he's part of that same coalition. Now you see,
and that's why he's aggrieved.
That you see, no matter how aggrieved you are, first of all, call into repentance, make people understand that you have repented from probably those things that probably they are accusing you of, that ended up not accepting them in their movements. First of all, fix that. You can't come and tell Nigerians, you that was rejected by a system that you pushed down the throats of Nigerians. And it's so funny. At times when I see him talking on air and trying to analyze things and give reasons why he is a person that should be part of a movement, I ask myself, were you not part of the former movement? The movement you were part of that ended up rejecting you? How do you expect Nigerians to expect anything better?
So do you think with the presence of El Rufai in the coalition movement is a minus already?
That is a man that has proven that he does not respect institutions. He was part of that system, and when the system kicked off, he started attacking the same system he was part of. That is a man that you can ask questions about. Does this man really know what he wants?
All right, let's move
because
on.
Let's be very clear. Does he know what he wants? And that's what I'm calling on Nigerians to consider. Move with men that have stood their grounds where they started.
But on the other hand,
and it should be on the basis of men that moved out having been accepted in the system, not men that were dropped. Get my
in
point,
the
sir.
system.
There's a difference from when a man is part of a system and he resigns from the seats.
Honorably.
Honorably, you can tell this is a man of integrity. This is a man that has something to offer to Nigerians. But a man that was dropped by a system, now going behind to fight that system, my brother.
So if he wasn't dropped from the system, or by the system,
I would have seen the light in what he's sharing to
but
Nigerians.
aren't 90% of Nigerian politicians, you know, having the same feathers as in men?
No, theirs is not as dangerous as this. Theirs is that most of them were still part of it, but they resigned or they left or they changed parties. But in his situation, my brother, he left as a result of being aggrieved. Even in his contents, when he's presenting his views and his thoughts
and his submissions,
you see the anger he has against the system that he brought to Nigerians.
Let's go a little bit further, because there's more to talk about, you know, regarding.
But I pray that the coalition understands that there's the need for them to sieve their thoughts and sieve their understanding and get to the point that they need to put forward men that are example to Nigerians.
All right. Now, the death of former President Muhammadu Buhari seemed to have created a kind of a vacuum in the north. Because whether you like it or not, Muhammadu Buhari was the force to reckon with in the north. Now, with the death of former President Muhammadu Buhari, do you see a kind of a shift in either a pendulum, you know, shift in still in the north to, because they say the likes of the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who of course is leading the coalition, and the likes of a few northern elites, you know, who are also part of the coalition, and still in the APC, there are some northerners in the APC who perhaps may have also command this little bit of affinity by, you know, members of constituents or Nigerians, you know, at large. But, you know, the pendulum seems to have shifted a little bit now. What do you make of it anyway?
Shifted to who?
No. I'm just throwing it to you. I'm throwing it to you now.
Buhari has already left the vacuum. And I must say this.
And that's why I said he was a force to reckon with in the north.
A mighty and a great force to be reckoned with. Then on the other side, different views. Some might feel aggrieved, probably because of some of his policies that they felt affected them. I did say on my social media handle, I said, listen, I will never speak evil of the dead.
But you can speak the truth.
May his soul rest in peace. If you are grieved, wait till Judgment Day. You can go and do that if you can do that on Judgment Day. But for now, he has gone. It's left for us and those of us that are on ground to either bring our minds and our heads together to understand that Nigeria does not need men that are individuals, but men that have come to become mighty enough in commanding a line of thoughts.
Yes, that's what I said. A vacuum is created already in the north.
And are you trying to tell me there's someone in your mind that you think is going to fill up that vacuum?
I'm only asking
Who are you insinuating? Because the way you're going is as if you're insinuating there is somebody. Well, I'm sorry to say that that vacuum has been created in the north. And presently, sir, I must say, I don't think amongst those of his age group, there are those of them that can fill in that gap. Though I know we do have
not all his age mates are politicians, mind you.
Well, notwithstanding, but I would say that. But if you look at the cream of the younger ones in between, like the Dogaras, Governor Finch of Adamawa State, and some other younger governors that are presently in between the gap of the
Bala
old
Mohammed of Bauchi,
Bala Mohammed and the rest, you discover that there is a possibility that probably we could get out of the next dispensation. But you must also check their track record.
Are you saying former Vice President Atiku Abubakar is now also a force to reckon with in the north? Because I didn't hear you mention the name of Atiku Abubakar.
You really want to touch me, but let me say something. My personal view. I think Atiku at this point in time should consider putting forward certain persons that could stand in and fill in the gap. That is my take. Secondly, Atiku is someone that has already taken his time and has struggled to get this thing for so many times. And I know he's weakened along the line as a result of what has gone out of him and the rest. But at this point in time, Nigeria actually needs someone who can take us into the future. Someone who has a connection between Atiku's age and the youths and the younger ones like us, someone who understands our way of reasoning, someone who understands that when we go to play football, we don't look at the faces of our religion and our tribes, someone who understands that the youths must take over Nigeria. For how long are we going to continue playing and exchanging and changing the older ones? Is it to the point that we get to the point that we don't have someone who has the cohesion to bridge Nigeria together?
It was like a passing of a baton from President Buhari to Tinubu. Of course, Tinubu is not.
Tinubu is still on the government, is still on seat, and presently you see, in as much like I did say, I know there are lots of policy somersaults that have been going on, but I would not say anything against his policies until we are certain that they will not fail by the end of this year. My take on his policies, in as much as we have been crying, Nigerians are crying, is that by the end of this year, if Tinubu doesn't do anything about the policies he's implementing and goes back, the confab that is going on right now, take the communique that will come out of it, study it and analyze it, and then come out with a front that will be able to galvanize our Nigeria into one movement, like the so-called national anthem that we change. You understand what I'm saying? Like I would say the other time, it's not about changing national anthem, it's changing the mindset of the people and also trying to align with the thoughts of the people.
All right. In the next, episode of this conversation, you will explain and expatiate more for the benefit of Adamawa indigenes and Nigeria as a whole. Meanwhile, Dr. Victor Dogo, thank you so very much for having time out of your tight schedule to be on the show. And I wish to see more of you again, and so that we can as well expatiate some of these talking points the more. Thank you once again. And this way we have come to the end of the conversation today. Thank you so very much for being with us from start to finish. Join us again same time, same station for a fresh edition of the program. Until then, stay safe. My name is Chris Jacobs, and those following us on our social handles, talking about Facebook page, thank you so very much. Join us again. I wish to get your comment on this very talking point. Send your comment on the comment section, even as you have followed this conversation today. Thank you so very much, and God bless you.